I'd like to introduce Pharmacist Brendan Quinn from Ireland. Welcome, Brendan.
Hi, Linda.
Could you tell me when you first got involved with LDN?
Well, funny, it's a very strange story. The first person that alerted me to LDN was a representative of a regional branch of the Multiple Sclerosis Society in Ireland, and he asked me to look into the treatment, which was beginning to show its face through Dr. Bahari's work in New York. So I went on, had a look at it, and thought, yeah, this looks like it's got potential, and it certainly looks like there's a valid chemical argument for why it's been used. I chased it up and started looking at it and looking at its use, and you probably know more of the story than I do at this stage, but we went through a process of firstly importing it until that was deemed illegal, and then making it until that was also deemed illegal in Ireland. So now we're currently at the stage where we have managed to help train and teach a local manufacturing plant to make LDN, and at a fairly reasonable price, though not as reasonable as we would have had it from the States or from ourselves when we were hand making it. But it's like everything else, the more popular it gets, the more it becomes a manufacturing process rather than a pharmacy doing a special for one or two patients, and that's where we got caught out legally. As it goes on, I become more and more frustrated that we don't have enough research to get it over the line as far as getting a product on the market would apply. But there are, of course, so many problems when it comes to that. I think the latest estimation for getting something like naltrexone to market for a new condition, price-wise, it must be close to $1 billion now for a company to do that, looking at all the research. And there's definitely a problem there. There's a major problem that an old drug can't be used for a new purpose without going through the complete process all over again. And that's just wrong. And it's also wrong that if someone discovers something like this, that they can't get a niche for themselves to make money before it gets copied by all the other companies. It's all about money, and that's the main reason we're not seeing naltrexone being redeveloped. Although, reading this morning, I can see it's already being trialled in all sorts of other conditions combined with all sorts of other drugs. The latest being a drug called bupropion, which used to be used for cessation of smoking. It still is used, but it has its own risks. And now they're trying a combination of naltrexone with that. So obviously the industry still has an interest in it. So that's where I am at the minute. I still continue to supply it. I still don't know scientifically how well it works, because the people we don't see very often are those that it doesn't work in, because they tend to go away dejected and disappointed, and we don't hear from them again, either in a public sense on the websites or even in a private sense by ringing me up. So we don't know how many people this drug didn't have any benefit for. Mm-hmm. And this is the part that's very frustrating, and this is where we really need to push research. We need to get the data onto paper, and that data on paper verified by colleges, so that we can push for the drug to push encouragement of its development. I have no doubt that it's beneficial in quite a few conditions. But what we need to know now is how can we legalise it and how can we document it?
How many patients would you say you supply LDN to?
I would say close to 500. Certainly that would have been our peak. We are somewhat restricted now, quite simply because it's a much more tedious process now. Naltrexone we were making to the American formula had an expiry of over a year, so we could supply large amounts all at once to patients very conveniently. Again, that was called into legal question in Ireland because mail order, would you believe, is actually illegal in Ireland of medicines. It's not illegal throughout the EU, but Ireland has decided that it's a risky business. I mean, there may be some good reason for that as well, but it's frustrating when there's a genuine difficulty in getting product to people like Polish patients. And we had been supplying throughout Europe, not just in Ireland. Very small numbers outside of Ireland, but at our peak it would have been 500, and that shrank back a bit now because we can't offer the same discounts and same low cost as we were offering, although it's still pretty good. It was better, and we can't offer more than 1 month supply now because the current manufacturer cannot guarantee an expiry date of more than 1 month. That makes it much more difficult. But yes, nearly 500. The main bulk would be people with infertility issues, but we also would have had quite a lot of MS patients and a good few of chronic arthritis sufferers.
Mm-hmm. What's the feedback that you've heard?
It varies. Almost all the feedback we get is positive. The worrying one for me is that some patients will ring up and say, well, I'm afraid to stop it because I feel great, but I don't know how much benefit I'm getting. I got a great boost initially. And we get quite a few of those. I would say nearly 50% would report that. And I would hate to think that I've trapped someone in a mindset that they have to keep paying me to get a medicine just because they're afraid to stop it. So that's where it's one of the moral dilemmas I find myself, or conflicts I find myself in all the time. But I can rest assured that quite a few pharmaceutical products do even less benefit, and people still come back getting those from the state and getting those from paid systems. And I do know this has benefited an awful lot of people. The ones that seem to respond most rapidly are the arthritis patients, but in many cases there, the drug does run its course and the condition seems to return. It seems to be, in that case, much more of a pain control mechanism. Mm-hmm. But the MS, we get varying amounts of success with it. We've had some incredible remissions with people on LDN, and then we've had someone in whom, they didn't even take it for a month and felt it wasn't doing any good and went straight back to what they were on before. So it's got a huge variation, but that doesn't surprise me because the condition itself has a huge variation in diagnoses and in types, even from primary progressive to relapsing remitting. There are so many types of MS that you would have to wonder, are there other underlying conditions like Lyme disease and ME that are being confused or misdiagnosed in many cases? The drug itself doesn't seem to be disease-specific. It seems to be very much related to symptomatic relief in that it seems to free up any muscles or any tissues that seem to be immobilized or weakened, and it also seems to be very good at relieving pain and pain that would cause restriction of movement. So the next things we have to do are, number one, try and find a legal route of getting this drug available to more people, and number two, find out how it works chemically. And there have been some developments, most notably from Stanford University, in where that's going. I'm lucky enough to have a student that will be doing some work on naltrexone and how it works in the next year, possibly 2 years. So hopefully the college will get interested on that project. They may try to extend that research further. I think there's a huge amount of encouragement to be had presently with regards to MS. Now, I've been watching very closely the development of up to 8 drugs which are about to hit market. 3 of those are oral tablets. One of them is a chemotherapeutic agent, in other words, chemotherapy, that was used, still is used for other types of conditions. Some of the trials are very encouraging, but the funny thing is almost all the drugs that are coming to market and all the drugs that are on market, they appear to improve symptoms by about 65% in about 65% or less of patients. Now, I think naltrexone falls well within that category, so I feel, as do quite a few neurologists, that it is as beneficial without half as much risk, because all of these new drugs are potent chemical entities. There hasn't been a lot of evidence yet about their safety, and we all know the story of the Tysabri-related fatalities, which were shocking, and yet it is, in my view, still the best drug for relapsing remitting MS on the market, but it carries that massive risk. So I think, as a lifestyle choice and a risk choice, naltrexone should be given some sort of status where it could be provided to patients who choose to use it and want to find if it's beneficial for them. There certainly is no evidence that I have seen that it causes any detrimental effect or makes the condition worse, and that was always the biggest fear. And of course, that's the reason for our regulators. Their number one aim is to protect the public, and they will be as boringly negative as we hate, but they're doing that for a good reason. They're doing that to protect the public, and that's why, we shouldn't be too angry at them. We should be angry at the system for not allowing this drug as some sort of an orphan drug status, but it's not the regulators' fault either. They are really trying to prevent issues like what happened with Tysabri, and issues what also happened with that smoking drug, bupropion, that I mentioned earlier. There was several fatalities to that drug as well due to seizures, epileptic type seizures. So this is why we hear and see negativity when we try and push this further, and this is what we have to overcome. It's a large mountain to climb, but I have no doubt that the people involved are the right type of people to do that. And I can't think of one person in this whole LDN circle that is motivated primarily by finance. But I couldn't say the same about the pharmaceutical industry in general. There's quite a few areas where I feel new drugs are simply being brought in for the sake of it. I'm very encouraged by the new drugs that are coming on stream for MS. The two oral ones, the Iniquimod-related drugs, seem to be encouraging. But I think it's the injectables, again, the drugs that are going to be better versions of Tysabri that will show huge benefits. Some of the trials now are very encouraging. I would remind listeners, too, that they should, wherever possible, stick to a very healthy diet and a best type or a swank type diet, because it certainly seems to reduce the autoimmune process. And the one thing I would also remind people is that they should be sure of a diagnosis, because we have seen several incidents where Pat Crowley and I have discussed it, where we would suspect that Lyme disease has been confused with MS. So it's always a good idea to get a second opinion if there's any doubt, particularly if somebody's an outdoorsy type or would be walking on land where there's a lot of ticks or deer. Mm-hmm. So that's my experience so far. I'm quite encouraged by that, and I think we're going to run into major barriers, because it would appear that every drug that's even slightly related to naltrexone, or every form of it, has been patented, and therefore that blocks anyone else being able to invent a new drug, a drug related to it, and therefore making money and developing a new product. That was my biggest hope, that we could tack on a little lump of wood at the side of naltrexone and make it a new drug, and then some company would jump at the chance to release it. But it would appear that those patents, I think there's 110 chemical products related to naltrexone that have been patented. Mm-hmm. So unless we can push the companies that patent these over the research line, it does appear we are grinding to a halt at the moment until we can get newfound status or recognition for the drug.
Well, let's hope that comes sooner rather than later.
Yeah. So I always encourage people to ask about the drug and to ask questions about it. And I know Stephen Dixon has been incredibly helpful all along this whole, and he's run into the same regulatory difficulties I have, and yet he remains patient and very helpful. And you know, you have to be grateful for people like him, and Skip, of course, Skip the farm. He's had a tough year, 2 years, and yet always remains available if someone has a question to ask about it. So I would like to think I could do the same for people.
Thank you ever so much for talking to me. And
you're very welcome, Linda.
We do appreciate what you do, Brendan.